Good day, everyone. My name is Nurlaksmi Tayonas Ramadhanti, and I'm from the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville. So today I would like to share a pedagogical framework that actually emerged from my experience working with multilingual writers during writing consultations. The title of my presentation is Exploring Reflecting Empowerment Pedagogy, or REP, Articulating a Humanist Writing Support Approach from Practice. Let's start. So, I would like to begin with a consultation that really changed how I understood writing support. A multilingual international student came to a writing consultation. We tried brainstorming several times, but the page stayed almost blank. And the interesting thing was the student actually had ideas. So the problem here was not a lack of ideas. The challenge was translating those ideas into English sentences. And over time, I could see that the student was becoming more and more overwhelmed. And at that moment, I started asking myself, um, is focusing only on writing process, like brainstorming, thesis development, and revision strategies, really enough to support multilingual writers? Because in that moment, the difficulty was not just writing skills. The student already had ideas, actually, but the challenge was translating those ideas into academic English in ways that meet institutional expectations. So, um, traditionally, writing center philosophy emphasizes collaboration, either agency, and non-directive tutoring, which basically means consultants guide students through dialogue rather than directly telling them what to write. But in practice, multilingual students often face additional challenges. For example, linguistic insecurity, unfamiliar academic conventions, and also institutional pressure. So, because of that, there is a tension between the ideal philosophy of writing centers and the actual realities that multilingual writers encounter in academic settings. So, what are the challenges for international multilingual writers? Research has also documented that international multilingual students often experience multiple challenges in academic writing. These challenges include linguistic insecurity, unfamiliar rhetorical conventions, identity negotiation, and institutional. So sorry. Sometimes it's difficult for me to pronounce that word. Institutional expectations, and these challenges suggest that writing consultations often involve more than just improving text. They also involve navigating language, identity, and academic expectations at the same time. So, at the same time, there is an information that I got about humanistic pedagogy. Humanistic pedagogies emphasize the importance of empathy, relational presence, and student-centered engagement in learning processes. These perspectives highlight that learning is not only cognitive, but also relational and emotional. This is especially important for multilingual students whose writing experiences often involve both linguistic challenges and emotional pressure. And the most interesting thing for me is the gap in existing research. Taken together, existing research explains several important aspects. It explains writing center philosophy, international student challenges, and humanistic approaches. However, there there is still limited attention to micro level pedagogical decisions inside consultations. In other words, when linguistic challenges, institutional expectations, and emotional pressure appear at the same time in a consultation, how do consultants actually respond in this practice? Reflective analysis of consultation practice. To explore this question, I revisited reflective field notes that I wrote every time after consultations. These notes were written over approximately 9 months, and I focused on sessions with multilingual writers. Instead of evaluating whether consultations were successful or unsuccessful, I revisited these notes to identify recurring patterns in how I responded during consultations. So here is my positionality before we're moving forward. My reflections are also shaped by my positionality. I am both a multilingual writer and a writing consultant, and I have personal experience navigating academic English as an additional language. Well, in Indonesia, English is not only second language, but it's an international language. And from this perspective, I believe that academic writing is not entirely neutral because international students often need to navigate multiple linguistic and institutional layers when writing in academic context. Even though writing centers aim to be supportive and collaborative spaces, they are still embedded within academic systems and expectations. From this perspective, writing consultations become spaces where language, institutional expectations, and student emotions intersect. This awareness shaped how I interpreted the consultation experiences I reflected on. So, across consultations, several recurring patterns appeared in my responses. For example, I often slowed the pace of interaction and attended to emotional cues from my student, invited students to articulate their ideas, wondered about their meaning instead of correcting immediately, and I highlighted emerging competence in their writing. Over time, these patterns appear consistently across consultations, especially when I help international students navigate their academic writing. This led me to ask whether these responses reflected a broader pedagogical orientation. And then from these reflective processes, I began to articulate what I call reflective empowerment pedagogy or REP. So the definition of REP is a reflective articulation of pedagogical dispositions that guide multilingual writing consultations. And importantly, REP did not emerge as a predefined method. Instead, it emerged from practice through sustained reflection on consultation experiences. Now, these are six pedagogical dispositions, if I may say, that guide how consultants respond during consultation. The first one is ease, the second one is engage, and then it is followed by listen, invite, wonder, and empower. So these six dispositions describe how consultants interact with multilingual writers during consultations. However, these are not the steps that consultants follow in a fixed order. Instead, they are orientations that guide how consultants respond to the needs of the student during the consultation. For example, easing pressure can help students feel more comfortable participating in a discussion. Listening carefully helps consultants understand not only the text, but also the student's thinking process. Inviting articulation encourages students to develop their ideas in their own words. So, because these dispositions interact dynamically, REP should not be understood as a sequence of techniques. Instead, REP operates as a relational structure where consultants move between these dispositions depending on the situation. For example, sometimes the priority may be easing pressure, or at other moments, it may involve listening carefully, inviting articulation, or perhaps, empowering the students to develop more ideas. And well, I love this illustration. To illustrate this relational structure, I conceptualize REP as a double helix, like a DNA, a double helix kind of thing. So in this model, writing consultation becomes a space of co-development. One strand represents the student's linguistic development, while the other represents the consultant's pedagogical growth. Through these interactions, both strands evolve together over time. Um, the reason I use the double helix analogy is because writing consultations involve two strands developing together. One strand represents the student's linguistic development, and yeah, well, while the other represents the consultant's pedagogical growth. Through repeated interactions, both strands evolve and influence each other over time. So, you know, you can see in the animation that there is some kind of growth, and that is what the my framework, the REP framework, tries to capture. All right. So moving on to the contribution of REP. REP contributes three things. The first one is it provides language to describe pedagogical practice in writing consultations. And second, it offers a framework for understanding multilingual writing consultations. And last one, it provides insight to the micro level pedagogical decisions consultants make when supporting multilingual writers. That was a lot to pronounce. All right, so the reflection. I would like to close this presentation with a question. If writing consultations increasingly involve multilingual writers navigating linguistic and institutional pressures, how should writing support practices evolve to better support them? That's all for me. Thank you very much. I'll see you around, and I can wait for your questions. Bye.